Hello and welcome, I'm Ellie Richardson and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Bomb blasts at 2 polling booths as Bangladesh votes in a high-stakes election following the 2024 ouster of long-term Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Chief of Army Staff General Walker Usman said after casting his vote, "I urge all voters to go to polling centres and cast their votes without fear." Police say an 18-year-old woman killed her mother and stepbrother before opening fire at her former school in Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia. 9 people, including the suspect who died by suicide, are dead in one of Canada's deadliest mass shootings. The motive is unknown. Russia fires drones and ballistic missiles across Ukraine overnight, targeting energy systems and injuring at least 7 people in Kyiv, Dnipro and Odessa. Ukrainian officials say hundreds of weapons disrupt power, heating and water as a massive attack hits buildings in the capital. Russia has blocked popular messaging service WhatsApp for failing to abide by Russian legislation, the Kremlin has said. Peskov said the decision was due to WhatsApp's reluctance to comply with the norms and letter of Russian law. President Donald Trump says talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu produced no definitive agreement on Iran. Netanyahu says Israel's security must be protected and signals no clear US commitment to expand talks beyond Iran's nuclear program. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel joins President Donald Trump's Board of Peace during talks in Washington. Images show Netanyahu signing the accession document after meeting Secretary of State Marco Rubio, confirming Israel's membership. An advisor to Iran's supreme leader says Tehran will not compromise on its missile capabilities amid ongoing talks with the United States. Ali Shamkhani calls the missile program non-negotiable during events marking the anniversary of the Islamic Revolution. Pro-Palestinian protesters rally in Melbourne on the final day of Israeli President Isaac Herzog's visit after clashes in Sydney and demonstrations in Canberra. Protesters unite across the country as Prime Minister Anthony Albanese hosts the visit following a deadly Sydney shooting. And for your top story this hour, polls for the 2026 Bangladesh general election and the referendum on the July Charter have officially closed at 4:30 p.m. local time. The Election Commission reported a voter turnout of approximately 48%. While the voting process was mostly peaceful, there were incidents of violence, including bomb explosions in Manshenghaiji and Bola Sadar, leading to temporary suspensions of voting in these areas. This election is significant as it marks the first since the ouster of Sheikh Hasina in 2024. The main political contest is between the Bangladesh Nationalist Party and an 11-party alliance led by Jamaat-e-Islami. Voters also participated in a historic referendum on the proposed July Charter reforms, which include significant changes to Bangladesh's political structure. We are now being joined by Major General Sudhakar. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. What do the initial voter turnout and conduct of what's been going on during these polling stations, what does this say about the state of democracy in Bangladesh today?
Eli, good evening. Thank you for inviting me for your show. I would say it is too premature to make any assessment, but suffice to say that 48%, going by the open source information, approximately 48% voting has taken place. And there has been, going by the Bangladesh standard and the estimate, it's been a very, very positive and very enthusiastic participation of the people for restoring democracy back to Bangladesh. Now, be that as it may, we should be mindful of the circumstances and the environment prevailing in Bangladesh, because we may call it as free and fair election. But here is a party, the largest party, Awami League, which has been excluded. So my take is that it has not been an inclusive kind of an election, notwithstanding what they claim and project. Number two, 48% for them, it may be a very high percentage turnout. Be mindful of the fact that the stakeholders who are participating in the elections are BNP, Bangladesh National Party, led by Rahman, and the Jamaitis. Jamaitis have a coalition with the National Citizen Party. This is the student organization. But more than the election, what is of relevance and importance is the referendum, which we tend to ignore. A referendum carried out for, in my parlance, I would call it a referenda. There are multiple issues in the referendum. So they want people to say yes or no, particularly to carry out reformation in the constitution, because that would be the sole responsibility of whichever power the political party comes to power. They have to ensure that the constitution is reformed as per the referendum output. So that is going to be a very, very tall order. And whether it is going to be comprehensive and holistic for the larger good of Bangladesh or not, it's anybody's guess. Time is going to tell us. But for the time being, I think elections have been conducted in a free and fair in comparative terms, despite all, I would say, pessimistic signatures that we have articulated so far. Number two, there have been violent incidents at a number of places, but there are far and few comparatively again. Number three, Bangladesh today is rife with intersection of three spheres of competitive influence. They are China, America, and the Islamic fundamentalism. We have to take note of the inflow of Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hamas, Hezbollah, name anyone, Rohingya Brotherhood. Everyone seems to be present in Bangladesh today for whatever purpose. They may be planning some activity against India, but inside Bangladesh, we should be very clear that the Bangladeshi Muslims are not Pakistani Muslims. There is a distinction and there is a difference. Whether Bangladeshis will accept Jamaitis' opposition or the governance, that time is going to tell us. Back to you, Ali.
And what key issues like jobs, inflation or governance are most likely to shape the voter choices in this election?
Livelihood. Ali, very relevant question you have raised. Livelihood. It is basically a square meal a day. That is what the people have been pushed to. The textile mill, which is supposed to be the central source of income, large, these are labor intensive kind of industry. They have been shut down, and there are people without jobs. The inflation is very high. Economy is in state of disarray. This is a country which had actually jumped from a least developing country status to a developing status. And look at the GDP, even despite all the flip-flop and the challenges the country has gone through in past 1 year plus, still the GDP is higher than that of Pakistan. And although they are falling into a gradual trap or debt trap, which China is trying to entrap them, but they have to be very, very careful. They have to tread a cautious path, balance out, because USA in earnest will definitely try to push back China, because China in past 30, 40 years or so has made deep penetration into Bangladesh. So that these are challenges at geopolitical level, global level, regional level. There are politics which are going on inside Bangladesh against India, which will have security, very hostile imperatives manifesting in due course of time. And locally, when you talk about the country itself, the basic challenge that they are facing today is the livelihood, the source of income to keep themselves alive and sustain themselves as human beings, because the human rights will come later. First, the belly has to be filled. Back to you, Eli.
Thank you, Stakaji. Don't go too far, as we will be back with you very shortly. Bangladesh has invited India to send election observers for the upcoming national polls. However, the Indian Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson Randir Jaiswal confirmed that India has yet to send any observers. Jaiswal mentioned that while the invitation was received, the decision not to deploy observers have been made, leaving the future of any potential engagement uncertain. We are now moving back to Major General Stakaji. Thank you so much for joining us back here on NewsX World. Why do you think India didn't reply back to this certain invitation?
I think it's a very wise move on part of India, because as things stand today in Bangladesh, you see, any good intention, act of gesture is being misinterpreted, and people within Bangladesh, they pounce upon India, start blaming that India is actually conspiring some activity in order to negate the democratic process of election. So let Bangladesh handle the way they are handling. Their election commission is quite competent. Security forces are quite competent and effective. They're doing a good job. And it's good that India has not responded, in my opinion. But there may be a second thought. You never know. They may have some other logic sitting in the South Bloc decision makers. They may have another rationale. But I personally feel they have done a good thing, one wise thing, staying out of this process of elections and not sending the observers. Back to you, Eli.
And what are the possible implications of India's absence as an election observer on the credibility and international perception of Bangladesh's elections?
You see, the post-Yunus, this interim government has come to take care of Bangladesh affairs. The relationship between India and Bangladesh certainly have soured, and it will take a great deal of effort by the party that comes, the political party that comes back to power. They have to take a call what kind of relationship they want to have with India. Going by the indications which have been generated by different expressions by the leader of BNP. I presume BNP is the one which is going to lead the race and come to power. The intention of BNP indicated so far is that they will like to have good relations with India as a neighbor. So that also the time will tell. Why am I guardingly expressing myself is because seeing the type of the jihadi forces which have assembled and concentrated in Bangladesh in past 1.5 years' time, particularly on 30 January 2026, there was a flight which moved from Karachi, I suppose, landed in Dhaka, and in that flight, out of whatever passengers were there, my input says that there are good numbers, 30-40 Lashkar-e-Toiba, who are fast shooters, who are expert in IED explosives, who are expert in communication experts, etc., have landed there. They are known for their expertise in, like they demonstrated what happened in 26/11 Taj Hotel blast. It was a Lashkar's kind of activity perpetrated by the Lashkar-e-Toiba. And likewise, there are many more. So if they have come in, and also be mindful of the fact in the recent past, there were very credible reports of 12,000 tons 12 tons of explosive, ammonium nitrate, along with the supplementary explosive material. They have come across the border into India, and the elections in West Bengal are around the corner. So we have to be very, very cautious and play our cards close to our chest in a very deft manner so that things don't actually flip-flop and don't slip out of hand. We have to calibrate every response from our side and help Bangladesh to come back to the process of democracy and normalcy as early as possible.
Thank you, Major General Stakhaji, but don't go too far as we will be back with you very shortly. Syria's defense ministry confirmed that the Syrian Army had taken control of the Al-Tanf base following the withdrawal of US forces who were part of the coalition against the Islamic State. The Syrian Army coordinated with the US to secure the base and began deploying along the Syrian-Iraqi-Jordanian border. In a related development, most foreign families have fled the Al-Hol camp in northeast Syria, which houses relatives of suspected IS fighters. Humanitarian sources reported that since Kurdish forces withdrew from camp, which previously housed women and children from various countries, including Russia, the Caucasus, and Central Asia. The Syrian government took over control of Al-Hol last month after Kurdish forces ceded territory, the camp Syria's largest for the suspected of IS relatives. Once housed around 24,000 people. Humanitarian sources noted that many foreigners have been smuggled out to Idlib and other provinces, while some moved to the main camp. Syrian authorities are now conducting a census of the camp to assess the situation. We are now being joined again by Major General Stakhaji. Thank you so much for joining us here. What does Syria taking control of the base mean after the US pullout?
My take on the whole issue is that it's a great move, great initiative, obviously at the behest of USA. But I visualize a lot of danger in this move because handing over the complete governance of Syria to the present dispensation, there are invisible and visible challenges. I personally feel that the USA troops should not have pulled out of Syria completely because there is a threat which is not imminent. It is live threat from the Daesh. And in the recent past couple of days back, it is one of the jihadis of the Daesh. He opened up a long-range weapon system, killed USA soldiers. I think more than one soldier was killed. Some of them were incapacitated. So, and they are down, but they are not out. So that has to be kept in mind. And gradually, if you look at the cadre strength of the Daesh, whatever decimation had taken place in 2017 with the Allied forces, that hasn't actually effectively neutralized them totally. They are reviving in fits and starts, and they have already regrouped themselves to a kind of a viable strength. The Daesh basically is looking after the Levant area, that is Syria, Jordan, North Iraq, but the silver lining in all this is that the Kurdish, which was a minority, which had not been given a status of identity as a separate entity, they have been integrated in some form to start with the Syrian constitution. The language has been accepted, and also there is a gradual process on to assimilate them as an integral part and component of Syria. That is the silver lining for which they have been fighting. They have been seeking support of USA for a long time. Now, they also have given assurance, and indications have come to that statement also to say that they would be joining the Syrian forces to fight against the Daesh. If that happens, perhaps it will strengthen and empower the Syrian forces for a contestation against the Daesh effectively. But my take and recommendation is that USA, the way they have shifted to Jordan camp now, they must remain close by for meaningful and substantive counter effects and counter strategy against the expanding and reviving Daesh in the region. Back to you, Eli.
Thank you so much, Major General Sujakaji, for joining us here today on NewsX World. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has urged that European Union to stop sending financial support to Ukraine if it wants to boost its own economy. Speaking ahead of talks with EU leaders, Orban emphasised that EU funds should be directed towards strengthening its own competitiveness rather than aiding Ukraine. The EU has contributed nearly $187.62 billion in assistance to Ukraine and approved a $95.4 billion loan for the next 2 years. Let's listen in to the Hungarian Prime Minister, Viktor Orban.
If we would like to have a better performing economy, we have to stop the war in Ukraine and to generate peace. Second, if you need your money for your competitiveness, don't give it to somebody else. So don't send your money to Ukraine. Instead of, we should spend on our own economy to improve competitiveness.
We are now being joined by Dr. Satoru Nagao, who's a fellow Hudson Institute, joining us from Tokyo. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. What are the main economic arguments Orban is making for redirecting EU funds away from Ukraine and towards domestic priorities?
In this case, recently, Europe faced something financial shortages because of they need to increase their own defense budget. But at the same time, Prime Minister Orban's Hungary is quite anti-Ukraine, even if they are in EU. Because of the 4 reasons. Firstly, Hungary rely on the energy resources from Russia. So that's why the deteriorated situation between Russia and Ukraine and cut energy supply from Russia to Hungary is one of the serious issues. But anyway, Hungary need to adjust because this is the 4th year, so that's why day by day they need to reduce reliance on these energy sources. So another one is Hungarian people in Ukraine face some difficulty. That is the reason the Ukraine and Hungary face a problem. But this is not only the 2 reasons. Indeed, another reason is EU-Hungary relation is also a reason. The EU dislikes Prime Minister Orban's strong measures in the domestic society, so that's why this is not EU's definition of the ideal country. So that's why the value-related problem has happened between EU and Hungary. So from these are the reasons there are some problem between Hungary and Ukraine, Hungary and the EU. That's why Hungary do not like the EU's policy to Ukraine. But at the same time, the last 4 years, even if there is a hesitation, Hungary cooperate with the EU to support Ukraine. But sometimes Hungary want to show their presence to stop the EU's support to Ukraine, because EU is a system that all of the members need to agree. So without Hungary, anything could not happen. So that's why Hungary's role is indeed very important, and not only EU but also the NATO. Every time Hungary's opinion is relatively influential, because all of the members of this group need to agree. Without this, they cannot move. So that's why this remark is important. But at the same time, Hungary's careful manner diplomacy, anyways, if something has happened, indeed the last 4 years, Hungary agreed finally.
Thank you so much, Dr. Satura Nagal, for joining us here today on NewsX World.
Thank you.
Julia Glow-Skenner, the Speaker of Germany's lower house of parliament, visited the Israeli-controlled part of Gaza today. She spent about an hour in the region, becoming the first German official to visit since the Hamas-led attack on October the 7th, 2023, which triggered the war ongoing. The visit follows Glow-Skenner being honoured by Israel's Knesset just a day earlier. The German parliament confirmed the visit in a statement, highlighting its diplomatic significance, especially during these heightened tensions. However, despite the ongoing conflict, Glow-Sckenner's visit is seen as a symbol of continued diplomatic engagement, signalling further efforts for dialogue and resolution. Lufthansa is facing major disruptions today as a strike by pilots and cabin crew causes nearly 800 flight cancellations, affecting around 100,000 passengers. The industrial action is led by pilots union Virginian Cockpit and the UFO Union, representing cabin crew. They are demanding improved conditions for occupational pensions for more than 5,000 pilots. Lufthansa has criticised the strike as unnecessary, saying a solution could be reached through negotiations. The airline hopes to return to normal flight schedules by Friday. Passengers are urged to check their flight status on the strike continues. Let's listen in to some passengers.
Ja, ich glaube, ich fliege Condor, also bin jetzt nicht betroffen. Aber wir hätten tatsächlich überlegt, Lufthansa zu buchen. Muss man dann natürlich das nächste Mal überlegen, ob man dann halt doch lieber eine andere Airline bucht oder so.
Ich halte eigentlich nicht viel davon, weil es wird ja durch den Streik auch alles ein bisschen teurer, wenn die, sage ich mal, mehr Geld dafür wollen.
Okay.
Und wenn das überall so wäre, wäre ja irgendwann nichts mehr bezahlbar.
That's all we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.